When Malcolm Astley received a late-night call informing him that his daughter's vehicle had been discovered in the parking area near the city beach, he immediately leaped into his car and sped there, as if he could still manage to rescue Lorraine if she were drowning. The man wandered along the water's edge with a flashlight, trying to spot his daughter in the waves, but she wasn't there. The tragic tale of 18-year-old Lauren Astley shook even the most indifferent hearts. First love, kisses, first serious relationship. The whole school envied this couple, tall, stately athlete Nathaniel Fujita and petite Lauren Astley, who outshone everyone with her individuality and energy. Although they had known each other since childhood, their high school romance began in their senior years and lasted 3 years. What happened next? Why did these two break up? And why could no one believe what actually occurred? We'll discuss this in today's story. Lauren Dawn Astley was born on April 1, 1993, to Mary and Malcolm in Boston, Massachusetts. Lauren was an only child, so she was the center of the universe for her mother and father. Both worked as teachers and from childhood instilled in her mind the right concepts of truth, wanting the girl to grow up to be a good person. Unfortunately, in 2006, Mary and Malcolm divorced and shared custody of Lauren. But despite the divorce, both parents adored their little girl and supported her throughout all periods of her life. And although this young woman lived only 18 short years, she managed to do a lot, not only for herself, but for society as a whole. Schoolgirl Lauren Astley was a very active person in every sense of the word. She played sports, tennis and soccer, sang in a music group, was a member of the Youth Symphony Orchestra, a member of the church choir, a counselor at a children's camp, and even played the lead role in the theatrical production of Annie at the local arts center. Lauren was always involved in something and didn't have a minute of free time. Although the girl was tiny, standing at just 4 feet 11 inches, her vibrant personality and individuality made her very noticeable. She was most interested in the performing arts. Lauren had a beautiful, strong voice, and not a single school or city celebration went without her participation. She was sincerely happy when she became the soloist of the a cappella group in high school. The second thing that fascinated Lauren was social life. She organized various events and was an active participant in all kinds of charitable actions. The purpose of her life was to care for other members of society, whether friends, relatives, or just strangers. Classmates loved her for her incredible honesty and openness. They knew who to turn to when any problems arose, and Lauren always gave 100% when asked for help. Friends, over 90% of viewers watch videos without subscribing to the channel. Check if you're subscribed. If not, please be so kind as to subscribe to the channel to support me. At age 12, Lauren first traveled to New Orleans to aid victims recovering from Hurricane Katrina. She returned there twice more with friends. The girls provided assistance to flood victims. She was so young, yet caring for others always came first for Lauren. Such actions speak volumes about her qualities and iron will. Everyone around her, parents, friends, classmates, and even strangers, felt the inner light emanating from her. Lauren Astley attended Wayland High School, where she was known not only as a diligent student, but also as a participant in various school events, be it concerts, competitions, sports, or community service. In high school, the girl truly blossomed. Classmates even considered her a trendsetter. This young woman was so vibrant that many wanted to be like her. Around this time, Lauren started dating Nathaniel Fujita. These were her first serious relationship. Nathan also attended Wayland High School, and he and Lauren had known each other since childhood. He was the star of the school football team, a promising athlete. Quick, tall, and coordinated, Nathan was very popular at school. Girls went crazy for him, attending all football games and acting as personal cheerleaders. But in his heart, there was only room for the petite, cheerful Lauren Astley. Nathaniel was the eldest son of Beth and Tom Fujita. Tom, A renowned guitarist and professor at Berklee College of Music in Boston, was an extraordinary person. He stood out from other community members with his creative pursuits. Once, Lauren even interviewed Tom Fujita for a school project, later posted on YouTube in 2010. Being an important part of Nathaniel's life, Lauren largely became a member of Beth and Tom's family. She visited their home very often. The parents of the two love-struck teenagers also communicated closely and kept in touch. In the first 2 years of their relationship, everything was fine between the young people. They spent a lot of time together, hung out, played sports, and simply enjoyed life and youth. Both were very attractive and seemed like the perfect couple to others. But over time, they began to clash over various issues, and their youthful romance started to resemble a roller coaster. Nathan and Lauren would argue, break up, then make up and get back together. One day they adored each other immensely. The next, they were irritated by the slightest thing. Such relationships are often seen in adult couples, let alone high school students. Although Nathaniel was somewhat spoiled by attention from females, he still felt very jealous of his girlfriend. At times, it seemed to him that she was ready to do much more for others than for him. In her final year of high school, Lauren began to think more often about what she wanted to achieve in her life. She started making plans for the future and choosing a college for further education. It was during this time that the girl unexpectedly realized there was no place for Nathan in her new life. She grew tired of the emotional roller coaster in their relationship and began to consider ending it all. Senior year is the last stage before adult life for any student. At 18, it usually seems like you have everything ahead of you, and you dream of great accomplishments, a successful career, new acquaintances, and vivid experiences. Lauren eagerly awaited college admission. She applied to Elon University in North Carolina, while Nathaniel chose a different institution. He was invited to play football at Trinity College in Connecticut. This was his cherished childhood dream. Lauren's friends knew about the problems in her relationship and wanted to support her. Together with Lauren, they compiled a list of reasons why she should break up with Nathan. This list mentioned such qualities of her boyfriend as hot temper, wild jealousy, and displays of aggression. He could also speak disrespectfully to his mother. The girl, left alone with herself, weighed everything once more and decided to end the high school romance. She broke up with Nathan in April 2011, on her birthday, considering it the best moment. Lauren chose an appropriate time and informed her boyfriend of her decision. They were going to be separated in the fall anyway, so both would simply continue living their own lives. But Nathaniel saw the breakup in a completely different light. He felt a sense of loss. The college he was invited to no longer excited him. All he could think about at that time was his relationship with Lauren Astley. From a sporty, ambitious guy who was always on the move, constantly training, Nathan turned into a withdrawn person, immersed in his thoughts, lying on the couch all day and looking miserable. Nathan stopped hanging out with friends, avoiding their company altogether. Lately, he had been consuming a lot of alcohol and indulging in weed daily. Although Lauren had broken up with Nathan several months earlier, she still continued to worry about him. It was unbearable for her to cause pain to someone once close to her. The girl repeatedly approached her friends and asked for advice on whether she should try to help him somehow, to which her friends unanimously insisted that she shouldn't give him reason to think everything could be restored. In 2011, Lauren graduated from high school and eagerly awaited her last summer at home with family and friends. To celebrate the new stage of her life, she and her friends threw a big party. About 150 students and graduates gathered under a huge tent, dancing and having fun, including Lauren's ex-boyfriend, Nathan. The girlfriends were chatting nicely when Nathan approached them. He was already quite drunk, so he decided to try to reconcile with his girl again. But Lauren politely asked the young man to step aside and leave her alone. She believed everything had already been said, and there was no point in having empty conversations. They had discussed the breakup enough times, and she was truly ready to move on. Moreover, in his drunken state, the young man would hardly react adequately to her words. However, Nathan couldn't even entertain the thought that his girlfriend would date someone else. He didn't give up and continued to pester Lorraine. At some point, the girl ran to one of her friends in tears and complained that Nathan wouldn't leave her alone. He was following Lorraine, not wanting her to dance with anyone. With each passing minute, Nathan began to behave more aggressively. Probably the resentment and consumed alcohol had done their job. When Lorraine once again refused to talk, the guy approached and hit one of the poles supporting the tent with all his might. The entire structure instantly collapsed. People rushed to lift it and put it back in place. And now, not only Lorraine, but all those present expressed their desire for Nathan to leave the party. The celebration was irretrievably ruined. Later, the girl even told her mother about how Nathan had behaved that night, unwilling to let her go. He was angry because Lorraine had broken up with him, angry because she didn't want to talk to him, angry because the girl seemed happy without him. For a while, everything quieted down. Lorraine decided to earn some money before starting college and got a job at a clothing store in the local mall. On Sunday, July 3, 2011, Lorraine arrived at work at 10 a.m. Security cameras recorded her entering the mall and going up the escalator at 9:45. After finishing her shift at 6:45 p.m., the girl left the building while talking to someone on the phone. Unfortunately, this was the last time she was seen alive. After work, the girl planned to meet a couple of friends and go for a walk, but she never showed up. Her friends became worried. Such behavior was uncharacteristic of Lorraine. If she had promised to come but couldn't for some reason, she would have definitely found a way to let them know. Not only her friends were concerned, her father Malcolm was also very worried. The man knew that his daughter had some plans for the evening, but after work, she was supposed to stop by home to change clothes and then rush to her friends. She didn't do that. Her father immediately realized something was wrong. He didn't waste any time and immediately called the police department to report his daughter's disappearance. Information about Lauren Astley's disappearance spread instantly throughout the town. People who knew her were in a panic. No one had seen the girl after she left the mall. The police immediately began search operations. In Lauren Astley's case, everyone acted very quickly, unlike many disappearance stories where law enforcement waits a certain amount of time before starting an investigation. Friends and family also didn't sit and wait for Lorraine's return. They sought help. So the search for the missing girl began immediately after Malcolm's call to the police department. That night, law enforcement officers made a huge discovery. Lorraine's red Jeep was found in the parking lot at Wayland Town Beach with the windows rolled down. Her purse and laptop were inside, but the girl herself was not there. There were no hints as to where she might have gone, leaving the car with open windows at the city beach. When Malcolm was informed about his daughter's car, he immediately rushed there. Like a madman, he jumped out of the car and ran to the water. As if she were drowning, he could still save her. It was a heartbreaking sight when the father wandered along the water's edge with a flashlight, looking for Lorraine, but she wasn't there. The girl's friends, upon learning about the red Jeep, were so worried that they spent the night at the beach, hoping Lorraine would appear. They just sat on the shore and waited, pondering where she could have disappeared to. At that moment, no one even entertained the thought that something horrible might have happened to their friend. Officers began questioning her close ones, asking if there was anyone who might potentially harm Lorraine or take her somewhere against her will. At first, no one could suggest a single candidate. The police had suspicions. They directly asked about her boyfriend and learned that the girl had recently ended their relationship. All her friends unanimously insisted that Nathan couldn't harm Lorraine. Yes, he was sometimes withdrawn and aggressive, but that was only because they had broken up. However, the police knew that a breakup and jealousy could be the main motive for a crime. Of course, the officers had already heard about Nathaniel Fujita. They went to his home that same evening when Lorraine disappeared to ask a few questions. The police talked to him and his mother, Beth. It turned out that the guy had been home the whole time. So essentially, he had an alibi, albeit not a very reliable one. Nathan admitted that he had seen Lorraine that evening. She stopped by for 5 minutes, but never got out of her car. According to the guy, they had a short, very awkward conversation, after which Lorraine left, and he hadn't seen her since. The detectives found the story plausible. The fact was that the breakup had a very depressing effect on the young man. He fell into a deep depression and stopped leaving the house. Nathan's mother, Beth, was so worried about her son that she took him to a psychiatrist, but it didn't help. Not knowing how else to help the young man cope with his emotions, Beth secretly went to the mall where Lorraine worked. She asked the ex-girlfriend to talk to her son, hoping it would somehow ease his distress and help him come to terms with the separation. The next morning, shortly before dawn, a cyclist riding on a path near the highway stumbled upon a terrible discovery. Her route ran near a marshy area. Looking around, the woman noticed something floating in the murky water. She stopped and came closer to inspect. It was the lifeless body of a young girl. Lauren Astley was found just 5 miles from town. The previous evening, her friends had gathered together on the beach near the red Jeep and tried to imagine where Lorraine might have gone. And they had no answer to this question. The classmates just sat in silence and waited, paralyzed by fear. They didn't know what to do, didn't know what to think, didn't know what to feel. It's hard to even imagine that a girl you were laughing and having fun with just yesterday could disappear like this. The body was in the water about 30 feet from the roadway. When it was pulled ashore, the cause of the girl's death immediately became clear. The state police investigator pulled back the edge of the blouse collar and saw a severe wound on her neck. 18-year-old Lauren Astley was found strangled with an elastic cord tangled in her hair and a gaping wound on her throat. The body was immediately sent to the medical examiner's office. Malcolm Astley hoped until the last moment that it wasn't his daughter, even when he went to the medical examiner's office. And then he did something no father should ever have to do. He identified the body of his first and only child. Lorraine had just turned 18, a vibrant, musically gifted girl with her whole life ahead of her. Malcolm had to make the official identification. He immediately knew it was his Lorraine. The pain the man experienced at that moment is indescribable, but he still had to convey the heartbreaking news to his ex-wife, Lorraine's mother. The tragic news spread instantly through the town. Friends who once knew the happy couple of Lorraine and Nathan, with some doubt in their voices, stated that Nathan was definitely not involved in this. He would never do something like this to his beloved. No one believed in the reality of what was happening. However, the detectives had a different opinion. When they talked to Nathan's relatives, they found out what enormous damage the breakup with his girlfriend had done to him. He was no longer the same cheerful football player, the girl's dream. Nathan had turned into a bitter person locked in his grief. He showed no enthusiasm for American football, a game he had dreamed of since elementary school. Investigators learned from Beth that she had secretly approached Lauren to talk to her son, trying to cheer him up, at least as a friend. Perhaps the woman didn't know all the details of her son's relationship with his girlfriend, which is why she decided to take such a desperate step. She probably couldn't even imagine how this meeting would end. All this time, Lorraine herself had been worried about her ex-boyfriend, also noticing changes in his behavior. Having a kind nature, the girl decided to at least just talk to Nathan to try to pull him out of depression. She wasn't planning to return to the relationship, but felt she owed it to him to support him during a difficult period in his life. When Lorraine was leaving the mall after work, security cameras recorded that she was talking on the phone. Her mobile phone records showed that she was talking to Nathan. The girl planned to stop by his place for 5 minutes and then head home to change clothes for meeting her friends. Naturally, she didn't tell anyone about her plans. Nathan's parents weren't home. Investigators learned that upon arriving at the residence, she sent Nathan a text message, and it was just one word: here. This is how she let the guy know she was near his house. This message was sent on July 3rd at 7:05 p.m., and it was the last message Lauren ever sent. Nathan's house was the last place where the girl was seen alive. All of this was enough to point detectives in the right direction for their investigation. On July 4th, the police again visited Nathan's residence to talk to him. However, this time he wasn't home, and his parents had no idea where their son had gone. In any case, this couldn't hinder the investigation. The officers needed to find evidence supporting their theory that Nathan was involved in Lauren's disappearance. So the police quickly obtained a search warrant for Nathan's house and started with the garage. It took them only a few minutes to realize something terrible had happened there. In addition to finding several elastic cords that matched the cord found on Lauren's neck, they also found several bloodstains. Blood was also discovered on the garage floor, on the doorknob, on the kitchen floor, in the kitchen sink, and in the bathroom sink. It was evident that someone had tried to wipe it off the surfaces. In the basement of the house, detectives found a black sports bag. Inside was a pair of sneakers, soaked through with traces of mud. And in a hiding place in the attic, accessed by a ladder leading from Nathan's bedroom, another pair of shoes was hidden, along with a pair of blood-soaked boots and blood-stained clothes. At first glance, the mud on the sneakers matched the type of mud near the swamp where Lauren's body was found, but this required urgent transfer of evidence to the laboratory. The evidence was indisputable. Forensic examination confirmed that the blood found on Nathan's clothes and boots matched Lauren's blood, and the mud was indeed from that area of the marshy terrain. Nathan Fujita was declared wanted. A few hours later, he was found at his cousin's house in a neighboring town. The next morning, on July 5, 2011, the 18-year-old football player was arrested and charged with the murder of his ex-girlfriend. When he was taken into custody without warning at his aunt's house, Nathan was quiet and compliant. He didn't say a word during questioning, and for the next few months until the trial began, he behaved in a similar manner. Either he was afraid of saying too much, or he didn't know how to justify his actions. On August 23, 2011, Nathan attended a preliminary hearing in the courtroom. When asked if he pleaded guilty, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, Nathan said he was not guilty. The prosecutor immediately realized that some kind of game had begun here. Apparently, the lawyers had already thought out a defense strategy. Nathan was charged with first-degree murder, as well as assault and battery with a dangerous weapon. More detailed information about what happened to Lauren Astley that evening became known during this hearing, including that other wounds were found on her body, which were alleged to have been inflicted before her death. On the night of the crime, Nathan called his cousin and asked if she wanted to hang out. When his cousin refused, citing other commitments, Nathan got upset and hung up. The next day, when Lauren's death became known, the cousin called Nathan and asked if he was aware that his ex-girlfriend had died. The guy's response was frightening. He said they would never find the murder weapon. Nathan also confessed to his cousin that he had driven Lauren's car, the red Jeep, to the parking lot at the city beach. He explained that he wanted to hang out with his cousin because he needed a distraction. At the end of the hearing, the prosecutor motioned for Nathan to be held in jail without the possibility of bail. This request was granted. Then, about a month before the trial, another hearing on pre-trial motions took place. Very interesting and disturbing information concerning the defendant came to light. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like this video, it's really important. In 2009, Lauren and Nathan were in one of their periods of breaking up again. The girl continued to live her life, and at some point went to a dance with her girlfriends. There was a young man who had previously shown interest in Lauren. Having broken up with Nathan, Lauren decided to give a new boyfriend a chance. They even managed to kiss while dancing. But then Nathan appeared out of nowhere and rushed at Lorraine's new admirer with his fists. Nathan threatened to cut this young man's throat if he ever approached his girlfriend again. Over time, the incident at the dance was forgotten. Lorraine's family and friends never noticed any signs of violence in their relationship. The only thing was that Nathan was possessive and jealous. If he drank, he became aggressive. This situation, which occurred 2 years before the crime, clearly showed the fury and jealousy that Nathan was capable of towards another person. And considering the wounds found on Lorraine's body, her boyfriend's words said, then took on a completely different meaning and indirectly pointed to Nathan as the perpetrator. During this hearing, it also became clear that Nathan was going to use the insanity defense. This didn't remove the charges against him, but it would significantly reduce the punishment for the crime. Nathan's trial began on February 13, 2013, 18 months after Lauren Astley's death. The defense team immediately claimed the defendant's insanity and continued to adhere to this version until the end of the 3-week trial. The lawyer, in his opening statement, admitted that Nathan indeed took Lorraine's life. In his opinion, there were 2 questions: why and how. The defense's argument was as follows: Nathan didn't stalk Lorraine after graduating from school, didn't drive by her house, didn't call her or send messages. He didn't want to see anyone or leave the house at all. Naturally, the guy's friends, as witnesses, confirmed this information, reporting that Nathan really fell out of the social circle, stopped going to training, and didn't want to talk to anyone. Friends and former classmates were worried about him because Nathan had become completely different in just a couple of months. The lawyer summed up by stating that something was actually wrong with Nathan because he was suffering from a serious mental illness. His mother, Beth, convinced her son to see a psychiatrist, and the doctor diagnosed him with severe clinical depression, not just a depressed state due to breaking up with his girlfriend, but a genuine mental illness. The psychiatrist suggested medication and therapy, but according to the defense, Nathan refused. Mental issues could have arisen not only because of the split with Lauren Astley, but due to recurring head traumas resulting from playing football throughout his school years. The relationship breakdown may have merely triggered an episode. Lorraine worried that she had become the cause of such a severe ailment in her former boyfriend. She feared he might do something drastic to himself. The girl's concern for Nathan led her to the Fujita house on the evening of July 3, 2011. It was at this time that Nathan experienced a temporary psychotic episode, which prevented him from realizing or controlling his actions. They headed to the garage to talk. Then the boy, not understanding what he was doing, grabbed an elastic cord, threw it around Lorraine's neck, and began to strangle her. He wasn't in control of himself at that moment. His body was acting, and while his mind was disconnected from what was happening, the boy had no emotional connection to the crime. Nathan was still in a psychotic fit when he repeatedly cut Lorraine's throat. At that moment, he was insane. This was the story of the defense team, who built their case on the defendant's insanity. It was time for the prosecution to have their say. The prosecutor asserted the complete opposite. Nathan Fujita intentionally took the life of his ex-girlfriend Lauren Astley because he couldn't handle the final breakup. This wasn't a crime of passion, but a premeditated plan to carry out retribution. On the day of the crime he committed, Nathan called the store where Lorraine worked, trying to reach her, and before that, he called her mobile phone 3 times. One of the calls was caught on surveillance camera as the girl was heading towards the exit of the shopping center after work. The prosecutor insisted that Nathan lured her to his place, knowing his parents wouldn't be home, then led her to his garage where the attack occurred. According to the autopsy report, Lorraine indeed suffered more injuries than just strangulation and a cut to the throat. She had clear signs of defensive wounds. This indicates that the girl resisted. Then, when Lorraine died, Nathan changed his bloodied boots for a pair of sneakers. He got into Lorraine's red Jeep and drove 4+ miles down the road to the town beach parking lot, where he left the car. He threw the car keys into a storm drain. They were found later. Then Nathan walked back home, put Lorraine in his car and drove to a marshy area. He didn't just dump the body in the swamp, he trudged through the mire 33 feet, risking his own life. Apparently, he hoped Lorraine would sink to the bottom, but he miscalculated. Nathan showed no remorse for his actions. One witness saw him that evening, returning home shirtless in his car with the windows down and music blaring from inside. Then the young man took steps to clean up the crime scene and hide evidence. He concealed his wet and bloody shoes and clothes, wiped blood in the garage, and calmly waited for his parents. According to prosecutors, this wasn't a fleeting moment of psychosis, as the defense tried to prove, but a planned attack. A forensic psychiatrist who examined Nathan testified as a defender. He stated that based on professional analysis, Nathan lacked the ability to recognize the wrongness of his actions. Severe clinical depression, recurring brain injuries from playing football, as well as daily use of weed and alcohol, deprived him of this capability. Since there were no previous mentions of abuse in Lorraine and Nathan's romantic relationship, and the young man had never come to police attention, the defense continued to emphasize that this was a one-time lapse, and Nathan was incapable of taking someone's life while of sound mind. All these arguments clashed with the prosecution's repeated attempts to prove otherwise. They also invited a forensic psychiatrist who evaluated the defendant's condition. This doctor stated that Nathan was absolutely of sound mind when he took Lorraine's life. The amount of time and effort spent committing this crime was evidence that he consciously made decisions and understood the consequences of his actions. It was a very emotional trial. By the end of the proceedings, Lauren Astley's mother sat in quiet grief. Her face contorted when the state medical examiner testified that her daughter likely lived for several minutes, bleeding out, after Nathan Fujita tightened the cord around her neck and ultimately slit her throat. Meanwhile, 20-year-old Nathan hunched over and cried. Apparently, only the realization that retribution for the stolen life was imminent made him understand the full gravity of his misconduct. Nathan's parents were shocked and distressed that their son could do something like this. They had invested much care and love in their boy and had welcomed his girlfriend Lorraine as a beloved daughter. Therefore, they worried even more for the Astley family, who lost their only child because of Nathan. Previously, both families maintained close ties and got along very well, but the weight of the crime now fell on their shoulders too. This was a shared tragedy for the parents. On March 7, 2013, Nathan Fujita was found guilty on all counts. The jury deliberated for a full day before reaching their verdict. The Astley family and the prosecution team finally achieved justice. But what good is it to them when their only child lies in the ground? On the day the sentence was announced, Malcolm, Lorraine's father, walked across the courtroom and hugged Nathan's parents. Knowing that both families had lost what was most precious to them, his action showed the strength of character of this man. Nathan Fujita was sentenced to life in prison. The state of Massachusetts mandates a life sentence without the possibility of parole for those convicted of first-degree murder. Lorraine's parents believed this crime could have been prevented. They dedicated their subsequent lives to spreading information for teenagers on topics of relationship violence and breakup violence. Malcolm and Mary created the Lauren Astley Memorial Foundation. It's a nonprofit organization that promotes healthy teenage relationships and also supports art and community service, two things that were extremely important to Lorraine. In January 2024, the Massachusetts Supreme Court struck down mandatory life without parole for those who were under 20 at the time of their crime. Lauren Astley's parents worry that the new legislation might allow Nathan Fujita to someday gain freedom. These thoughts break their hearts because they believe the criminal who took the life of an 18-year-old girl should remain in prison. This is the end of the story. Like the video and leave your thoughts in the comments. This was Jeremy. See you soon.